Welcome to Sew It Begins. I'm Victoria. Let's get started on the cotton candy skirt. This one is based off of the peppermint twirl skirt as shown here. I changed it up to make it three colors that was actually picked by my daughter and her friends. And this skirt is actually very twirly, a lot of fun to actually show. So let's cut it out. So what I have here for the cotton candy version of the peppermint squirrel skirt is these strips here that I have cut out. So you'll notice that this pattern has a distinct curve, and I literally just put it on top, traced it with a pencil. Now you'll notice that I did pinking shears here. I did that because it has to go on a curve. I am going to overcast this edge, but I don't want it to fray in the meantime. So again, I cut it with pinking shears so it'll naturally want to curve, because again, when you're doing things on a curve and you want them to flow a little bit, you actually have to cut notches into it so it'll spread. And the pinking shears do that for me. So you'll notice here that yes, I've pinked these edges and then I've done an overcast stitch. I've did this before I started sewing things together, because as you can see from the section that I have sewn together, is there's not really a nice way to do this overcast stitch at the end. By doing it before, I'm able to color coordinate so that way it matches the fabric, the threads match the fabric, and I'm not trying to alternate between. Now, what I did do for this seam, you'll see that my one thread, my bobbin thread, was actually purple, and then the top thread was the pink, so that way you don't see it. Now, that does mean that I'm sewing them in a very specific order. I'm trying to do all my purple on bottom, then all my pink on top, and doing all of them. Each of the skirt is going to need 3 blue, 3 purple, 3 pink, and then that'll give us our cotton candy. But again, make sure you overcast before you sew them, because you will not be able to overcast them once you get them sewn. So prime example is down here at the bottom, where you can see this overcast edge is literally sewn in here to join the panels together. So there's no way you would be able to overcast this little bit when you sew it together here. Something I want to point out here is to keep a consistent look, we want to go pink, purple, blue. So the next one in this series is actually going to be hot pink. So you'll notice there is an outer curve, which is bigger, and an inner curve, which is smaller. So if I were to pin this pink onto this blue, I would actually need to take this outer curve, remember, see how I flipped it over, and pin it. So this top edge, because we're more concerned about this up here, is in line with this. And so I'm going to do that all the way around. And so I'm going to have to manually move this fabric into position, because again, there is a curve here and I'm trying to match up to an outer curve, granted on the pink, not the purple. But I'm going to have to do that for everyone. So it is almost easier to take all of these and, okay, I'm going to have the outer curve on top. I'm going to pin it like so, and I'm going to pin it this way so it will curve along there. So as I'm sewing, I can make sure to flatten it out as I'm sewing. But again, it wants to go pink, purple, blue. So I'm going to put the pink on the inner edge of, the inner edge of the blue, but I'm going to do the inner curve to the outer curve of the purple. Something I do want to point out is that because this is a curve, again, this is going to curve past. Obviously, the curves are not going to match up. So I got this as close to the edge as I can, because when it comes to these edges, you'll see on the one that I've already done here that the edges are going to come around and it's going to give us that swirl pattern, because again, we want the feeling of movement as we're going along. And so it's not going to line up to the edge. It's not really supposed to, but that's okay, because again, this is a skirt. We have this longer than we need. So don't freak out when you start pinning and you realize that that top edge matches up, but the bottom doesn't. The top needs to match. The bottom is not as important. All right. I have all the panels sewn together, and what was easier was to take like all the purple on blue, sew all them together, then do all the blues on pinks together, and then all the pinks and purples. Because as you can see here, my bobbin thread matches the bottom color fabric, and this thread, this top thread, matches the top thread here. Now, I am currently working on the casing, and you'll notice that I have overcast all these edges. I have folded this down because I'm going to do an elastic waistband here, and I'm going to sew it down and I'll thread the elastic and sew it through. You'll notice that I pressed open these seams. Again, overcasting before sewing everything together made it a lot easier, but I'm doing that because these sections are cut on the straight of grain, so they're more vertical. So to do a double fold will go a lot better for these. Now, consequently, here is the hem. All of this is essentially cut on the bias. So it is never going to double fold very well. You can do it, but it has to be super teeny tiny. To that end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some bias, and I have this one here that matches reasonably well enough. Again, it's not going to go well with the purple or blue because obviously it's hot pink, but that will give me a cleaner edge than if I try to double fold this up, because when something is on the bias, if you try to fold it up, it doesn't want to curve. You see how there's extra fabric here? It naturally does not want to fold like that. So by doing the bias binding on the hem, I'll get a cleaner edge. You can do it on the top. I would still fold this down at least once just to have it out of your way. But if you're going to do binding, make sure it is thicker so your elastic can fit through it. This is way too small for that. So this, because again, it's cut on the straight of grain, will be easy enough to fold down, sew in place, and have my elastic. Here's a final look at our skirt. If you're interested in more projects like this, feel free to email me. But just because I think everyone needs to see a twirly skirt, let's see it in action. Enjoy, everyone.